Hey everybody, it's Nick. In this video, I'm very excited to share a beat I made only using one sample. That's right, I made this entire beat only using a fireworks sample from our cinematic effects library. I thought it was a kind of fun summer kind of sound, and I've definitely been hearing fireworks nonstop in NYC the past week. Here's the original sample. And then here's the beat I came up with. All the sounds, again, made from that original sample. If you like the sounds you hear, we'll have the Ableton project, the stems, and the MIDI files available for a free download at the top right of the screen, as well as in the description. Cool, so I pretty much use Simpler, Sampler, and Pigments in some cases, which if you didn't know, features a sample engine that's really nice for the granular synthesis part. So for the drums, I've got the kick here, and we can kind of zoom in using pinch to zoom, and you can see I kind of just isolated a single transient there. Now, there are three main things that make this kick kind of work, and that's the envelope shape. So if we look at the volume here, let's just take this and put it normal. So you can hear that just sounds like a low firework. But if we tighten up the envelope, that really can give us a kick kind of percussive sound. Beatfromer is great for adding punch to your drums, and that's on rent to own. The boom and punch parameters are really important for adding that extra bite to your kick. Let's listen without Beatfromer. So big difference. And then we have an instance of Neutron's transient shaper, which will allow us to sculpt and control the peaks and the transients of the audio, which will allow us basically to make it even sharper. So here's without transient shaper. And then, of course, an important part of this is the glue compressor with soft clip at the end. So that's how you can kind of make a kick sound out of this low end of the firework. For the hats, it was pretty easy to find the sound. It was just isolating one transient, putting, some high passing through the EQ here. And then I had an instance of Stutter Edit, which we just launched on Rentone. It's an amazing plugin, and I use Stutter Edit a lot on this track. But right now I have it in auto mode. So Stutter Edit is two main modes, like MIDI. So performance, you can play the effects like with a keyboard and perform your effects. So it's more like an instrument. It's really fun. And I use that a little bit. But in auto mode, it's just basically like a regular effects. But it has these individual effects modules, which sound really nice. And I use this to add a little texture to the hi-hat. So let's listen. I automated Stutter Edit on and off. Here's the hi-hat pattern. So you can see it's automating on and off here and adding a little comb filtering to the hi-hats, giving it a little like texture every now and then. And then I just kind of duplicated that hi-hat to give a little count in a hi-hat. The next sound is a kind of just the fireworks sound itself to give it a little roll sound. And here I had the sample on sustain mode where it's going to go back and forth between this looped region. So let's just solo that little roll. So all that was accompanied by the snare drums, and all the snares sound like this. So as you can see, I use different chops of the fireworks sample to give each snare hit a slightly different texture. And there's two main snare layers, this higher one and this lower one. For both these snare layers, I used Neutron transient shaper. You'll find as you do the single sample challenge or when you're really getting to sound design, transient shaping is very powerful. So I use those to, especially for making drum sounds, use those to make these snare layers. And all the drums sound like this now. So the chords are like one of the most sound designing parts, and I definitely used a lot of Stutter Edit too on this, and I used the MIDI mode or that performance mode. So let's take a listen to the chords, and finding the chords, I'm going to just disable some of this processing here. I'm going to turn off OTT, Stutter Edit, and just kind of, okay, so this is a filtering with some EQing. I'm going to turn off the auto filter. This is what the chords sound like by themselves. I do have some automation on this gain on the utility here, and this just kind of creates some kind of extra shaping sounds. Now to get this sound, it's just a sampler, and it's again using this kind of very small, this is now almost granular synthesis where we're just taking a small loop of audio of the firework, and it's looping. If I hold one note down, it's gonna sound like this. So it's a pretty gritty, square, saw sounding type wave. Now Stutter Edit, I have two instances here. This one is, I think, in auto mode. So this is, again, more just like a static effects rack. So you can see all these different modules here, the lo-fi chorus cone modules. All the audio is running from top to bottom. And it's like, just really high quality effects here. But the real beauty of Stutter Edit is when we perform it. So here's this instance. Now this instance is in MIDI mode, and it's really nice because it shows you how to set this up in your DAW that you're using. And while you do need a separate MIDI track, then it allows you to play these effects basically across your MIDI keyboard. And what happens is when we go to this main gesture bank, once you're in the gesture bank, you can see that each one of these keys actually houses a whole preset of the effects. So like each one of these is different. And as I use the MIDI track here to cue them, you're gonna see this change. So here's from the beginning. You can see that it jumps around and it's triggering different presets. It's really, really powerful. So here is with OTT, so that's to balance out the dynamics. So this is the full processing here. So again, you can see all these kind of patches jumping around, and that's based off of this MIDI track right here. So this MIDI track, the Stutter Edit, if I actually arm it and then play it, you can see that it switches all these patches around, thus making it very performative. And it makes it really fun and seamless to come up with crazy sound design ideas using, just a few keyboard notes. The other two elements in this group are the melodic high notes, and this one's kind of just like a pluck single staccato note. So I've got this high pluck, and it's just simply some reverb, a little Stutter Edit 2 on this drone 1 bank, which sounds really nice. And this just outlines the chord progression notes. And then we've got an instance of sampler here carrying out this really high note. We've got the sustain mode on, and another instance of Stutter Edit kind of creating some texture here. If you go to the pitch and oscillator section, you can hear the glide is on down here. And if you listen to this kind of third note going to the fourth note, you can hear it bend down. All right, so for the bass, I did use an instance of Pigments. And again, that has a sampling engine. So what we did is we went to the main synth section, and under the engine, we went to sample, drop the fireworks sample in, and then I use this granular synthesis engine to hone in on a part of the fireworks. It looks like in the middle of a firework explosion to get a really low subby note. So that's what this sounds like here. And this is a low MIDI note. So I took this one note, resampled it to audio. So I just used an audio track, hit resampling, hit record, and just record it in. And once that's recorded in, I drop that note, so because that's like a nice low sounding sub note, into a sampler of its own. And that's this instrument right here. And that way I can kind of tune it and get it into a bass line. I also used a little resampling, sampled that bass, reversed it to create a nice little transition. I really challenge y'all to find a single sample, one sample, and try to, come up with as much of a track as possible using that one sound. It's a nice sound design challenge, and it's also kind of liberating because every time I'm, thinking I need a snare drum or I need a tom, I need a hi-hat, any instrument I'm thinking, I know the next action in my DAW is to add in a sampler or simpler or, in this case, maybe Pigments, and drop in that sample that we started with. It's only that one sample. You don't have to think too hard about which sound you're going to find. You know the sound. You just need to then figure out how you're going to design it. So it's pretty liberating. Again, you can download the free project, the stems, the MIDI files linked in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be releasing new videos weekly. As always, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Stay inspired, stay positive, and I'll see everyone next time. Later, everybody.